So are you ready to PR yourself? We'll remove the mystery from all things PR, and we'll discuss everything from our top strategies to tips and tricks and everything that you can utilize to further enhance your brand or your message. I've been in media, I'm a journalist, and I'm also a publicist. I am Leah Frazier, CEO of Think3 Media, and your host for PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. Let's go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. You guys, listen, you guys are blowing my mind. We just received notification that this podcast is in the top 30, number 29 actually, in the US for marketing podcasts and in the top 100 in Canada for marketing podcasts. So thank you to each and every one of you faithful listeners. Thank you guys for sharing this out. Thank you for interacting with me. Thanks for sharing it on social media. We're just extremely grateful that this project has reached the levels that it has in such a short period of time. So thank you again. And I want you guys to just get interactive. Go on pryourselfwithleahfrazier.com. Leave me a message and let me know if you have an episode suggestion or there's something going on with your business that you want me to bring in the experts to help and tell you how to PR it better. Again, get involved. You're going to go to the link in my bio at the Leah Frazier on Instagram, and I have a whole list of things you can do. You can join our private Facebook group. In that group, I go live. I tell you what's hot and trending in social media and marketing and PR. I put media leads in there. There's one I've got to do today. And you're also going to want to interact with the other women. And I think we have some men in that community now, in that private Facebook community, okay? Because I'm going to start growing that so that you guys can discuss among yourselves how to PR yourselves better as we move through 2021 and beyond. Also, if you're interested, we still have the monthly membership available. It's only $49 a month, and you can find information on that at think3media.com/think3edu. That is our monthly membership where I literally do a class session like I would teach with my students at the university. I do a class session on what's hot in marketing and public relations. I give you your takeaways. I give you something to work on for 30 days. And then several weeks later, we come back and we mastermind as a group to make sure that we're working on that one thing that you need to get worked on for that month. And we continue that monthly. And it's a great resource and it's a great way, an affordable way for you to hear from me. I bring in experts and also for you to have accountability. That way you're working through for solutions for your small business or as an entrepreneur. And lastly, you're going to want to stay tuned. Yes, pryourselfbook.com. You're going to want to sign up for that as we get closer to the book being released. But also you're going to want to go to PR Yourself with leahfrazier.com online. There's a tab called course, and you're going to want to sign up there because I am re-releasing my live course one last time. I know I said that before. I'm going to do it again. I have just revised it. I've created a couple more modules, and it's really going to go into a little bit more of an organized depth on how you can earn free media and press coverage consistently for your small business and your brand. And again, it's super duper affordable, and I want to offer that to you guys. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And enjoy this latest episode, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Welcome back to another episode of PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. I know I say I'm always excited, and you guys say, okay, you start every episode the exact same way. But no, I really, really, really am excited this time because I have my dear friend Adrienne on today. We are in this mastermind, heavy money making, goal setting group together. And she is just so awesome. And she shared her story a couple of weeks ago. And I immediately reached out and was like, oh my God, I need you to come on my podcast and tell your story to my listeners. Cause it was just so moving and inspiring and incredible. And I'm going to shut up because you are amazing. Welcome to my show. And thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you, Leah. It's awesome to be here and a joy as well.
Where are you at? What side of the world? Where are the US?
Yes. Well, I'm in San Diego. I just moved here at the end of December, and it's been a big goal of mine for some time. So I'm super happy to be here. I call it my heart home. The first time I visited, I knew I would live here, and so finally made it.
I am so jealous. I have not been to San Diego since I did Sean Croxton's Mastermind a couple years ago. And I don't know, shout out to Jody Brown, but there was like this burger joint that we walked to every single day from downtown because they had like these keto burgers, or I don't know what it was. And we ate it every single day. And it was so good. And the weather was beautiful. So I am jealous. I don't know what it's doing in San Diego right now, but Texas has lost its mind. It's like lost its mind. It's like freezing ice stuff on the ground, but it was 60 degrees last week. My state. I don't know. What's it
That
like
sounds like where
in
I grew
your
up.
Oh,
Oh,
really? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Northeast Ohio.
Oh, okay. Now, where is that in relation to Cleveland? Because that's where my mom and my nana, that's where they hail from. Cleveland Heights.
No way. Oh my gosh. So I grew up about 45 minutes away from there in a tiny town called Champion outside of Warren.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I know this has absolutely nothing to do with the episode, but I'm sorry, I have to go here. So I played basketball in college at Roberts Wesleyan, which is in Rochester, and we had one of my teammates who was a year ahead of me, Aaron Kayla, the Kayla family. They were from Warren, Ohio, and that was like my first encounter with. I went home one time with her and I'm like, where am I? It's like wooded. It's like, and I'm like, oh, it's very different from the big D, the big Dallas. And it was like, I was warped into another time. Warren,
Hmm.
Ohio. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yes, ma'am. And that is, I think, a big part of my story because if you've been there, then yeah, you've seen it, and it's hasn't changed much.
So let's get into it, Adrienne. We'll get into what you do today because I think that that's obviously super important because you've channeled your story and your life journey into now blessing so many women. But let's talk a little bit, as willing and as much as you're willing to share about your journey, like where was Adrienne years ago and how did we get to where we are today?
Oh, well, thank you for that warm invitation to share. I grew up, as I said, in Northeast Ohio, and I lived in a bubble, a very, very tiny little bubble. We were not only from a small area, because we didn't live in Warren, we lived outside of Warren. I grew up the first half of my life in a tiny little place called Wethersfield Township, south of Warren. And then the second half of my adolescence, I was from about 13 on in a little town called Champion, as I mentioned, north of Warren. Both were somewhat rural, especially Champion. We were also homeschooled. And that plays a big part in this story, as many people are understanding during the pandemic in the last year. Being at home all the time with your family can be a blessing. And if you don't have all the tools to know how to communicate, how to parent, it can also be a nightmare. And so, yeah, childhood was difficult. I didn't know how difficult, of course, because I was in it until I grew up and moved away and went through my journey. But it was quite interesting. We had a lot of different traumas that happened to our family and to me and to my siblings, health situations, which we all know can be very devastating. We had, health situations in two of my siblings, and they were pretty serious, requiring a lot of my parents' time and resources. There were four of us. There are four of us, and thankfully, I will caveat all this to say all of us have come through to be very resilient and strong and amazing adults, contributing to the world in some beautiful way.
Great.
One of us is a surgeon, one is a nurse, and the other works for the military. But it was intense, and so we had a lot to overcome. Let's put it
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys close? Do you feel like the resiliency and what you had to overcome brought you together?
Yes, for in different ways with each of them. I'm very close with my sister, and one of my brothers works a lot, but he's one of the most gentle and kind souls you'll ever meet. And then the other brother, I'm close with in a different way. We all still talk. We all still would help each other at any moment, but it manifested in, and each of us is still on our healing journeys to some extent. So it's manifested a little bit different in each of us and each of those relationships.
So how did your childhood upbringing, like how did you find it kind of manifesting itself in your life? And at what point were you like, whoa, 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 you know, there's something here that needs to be addressed?
Oh, I was about 8. I remember when I realized that I didn't have the same kind of life that others did. We went to a little private school for a short period when one of those health situations came up in one of my siblings. And I have this very vivid memory of breaking down and telling my mom that I was a bad person. And what happens with a lot of trauma is oftentimes children don't know how to cope or to process things that are happening to them, to their families. And so, because of all that happened to our family, as well as how my parents reacted to it, and how that flowed into our daily day-to-day interactions with them, um, I just children think they're bad, right? If you are constantly in a negative environment, you're going to think you're bad. And so I remember seeing all the other kids, the different families, the way those kids interacted with their parents. I remember just understanding that there was something off. I didn't like being hugged by my parents. It didn't feel like what it looked like for other kids. And I remember I felt a sense of loss, a sense of grief at that point, and I wanted to get out. And that was literally when I started planning that I would leave home when I turned 18.
And you did?
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, not in a way that was helpful to my experience at the time, although now I look back and I can be grateful for everything I went through.
Where did you end up going?
Well, I ended up meeting a man when I was 16 and marrying him, and he took us away. So what he did was he ended up, oh my gosh, this is a long story, but he ended up
It's
having
okay.
then.
I have time.
Okay. My story is raw. So just, trigger warning. I do keep it gentle, but he was a previously registered sex offender, which I did not know. And I was 16 and he was, I honestly can't remember now, 44, 42, 40.
Did you guys, how did you guys meet?
He moved in down the road from us. Later
Mm.
on, we found that he had probably found me or seen me outside of his workplace in a group setting that we worked that we would go to. We would go to this monthly co-op for again, we were raised very rural, homeschooled. We were involved with a lot of homeschool groups, a lot of Mennonite and Amish groups. And so there was this food co-op that we were a member of, and they used to meet to unload the truck next door to his workplace. So we think that's where he first saw me, and then he bought the house 2 doors down.
Wow. Like my mouth right now is on the floor. So, and I'm going to say this from a place of like, I'm not even joking, just because, I went to school for criminal justice and then became an attorney, and then I couldn't handle the family law. I did a couple of cases. I couldn't handle it emotionally. So I got out of that, and I was just like straight bankruptcy because I could go home, and kind of cope at night. Right. And then I tried adoptions on the side. I couldn't do it because of the files we would get from CPS. And I was just like, this isn't even happening to me. And I am energetically drained, and I'm having to find ways to like lift myself back up. But I am still that person that's like obsessively listens to Nancy Grace and the ID channel. And I think you brought up in our group, like, look, my life is a Lifetime movie. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? And so you still watch those things, and when you hear it, you're just like, I can't believe what I'm hearing. And then when you meet someone just as gentle and just as amazing as you are, and you hear their story, you're just like, and I will tie this all back to business, but you're just like, I can't believe that. And thank God this person made it, to the other side, and that you're willing to share with others to connect. So, all right. So you guys end up moving away and then getting married. So then what happens?
So then that was the beginning of a journey from, I like to call it, one level of hell into the next level of hell. It was domestically abusive, extremely emotionally, verbally, sexually, and financially abusive. And the one thing that he very rarely did was physically abuse me or hit me. And that was the one area of my childhood that I had been taught not to accept. So I did have a lot of self-respect in that regard. So it was very interesting. And I thought that as long as you're not being beaten, then you're supposed to stay married. I have a Presbyterian and Catholic family on each side. So that very much, you are married and you're married forever. And, you made a vow. And if you don't keep it, then you're not a worthy person and you're ruined. So yeah, I tried to make it work, and boy, did I work hard at that. And I had a job at the bank as a teller. I just walked in one day and he had lost his job, and I was like, I'm going to go get a job. So I was always a go-getter, and I was still expressing my natural driven self, and then hiding this experience of just hell on earth at home. And I was successful in my work. I always did a great job. And up until about 6 years ago, I actually was very good at working. The PTSD eventually made work difficult for me, but in the beginning, I was a great employee, and I loved being at work. And so as I started to grow, I was actually at home because of a foot injury I'd had, and I was watching Lifetime movie. And that was the first time I ever watched it, because we didn't watch a lot of TV growing up. And I was watching this movie about this woman and her life, and I was going, oh my God, that's what my life looks like. That's how I get talked to and treated at home. And I just had this huge awakening of, my God, I think I'm living in this, and maybe I don't have to live like this anymore. And by then I had gotten pregnant with my daughter, and that was a whole adventure of epic proportions because of the stress I was going through. I ended up in early labor at 28 weeks, and I always decided that I didn't care what was happening to me. I was going to make it. And so I would tell her every day. From one of my dear friends, Carrie, gave me this. She had carried twins, and she said I would tell them every day in the shower, hold my belly and tell them, today is not a good day to be born. It is just not. You may not come today. And I did that. And she came, I was in early labor. I was on modified bed rest until weeks 35. And then because of some work stuff and FMLA, the insurance wouldn't kick back in for me to be off. And my ex-husband was unemployed again, and which was an ongoing theme in our lives. And I told her when she could be born, and my water broke that morning. It was pretty wild. And I started to find my power. That was when she was born, I just really started to be like, I don't like this. I don't want this. And I'm going to do something about it. So eventually I did leave.
That is incredible. So how did you channel all of this? Like, what was the process in saying, okay, this is the type of community that I want to build. This is the type of consulting and the type of business that I'm going to build, because I can't imagine having to relive your story and your journey over and over again for the sake of healing others, which that's a gift, but it's also, do you take a lot of salt baths?
I would. Oh yes. My daily routine is pretty intense in the self-care department, which I can briefly go over in a few minutes, but it was years. It took me years, and it actually culminated in a PTSD diagnosis, which and 2 autoimmune conditions along the journey. I broke. I didn't know. I didn't have the tools to cope with what I had been through. And I remember it was in 2014, another event had occurred. I kept getting, interpersonal relationship issues everywhere, at work, at home. And I couldn't figure out what is wrong with me. Why am I so easily upset? And why am I so afraid? And so finally, finding out about PTSD. But at the time, and in Northeast Ohio, there just isn't a lot of awareness around trauma and what it's doing or what it has done and can do to us. So I just kept trying to survive. And I was going to school full time and working full time and had a relationship and a house and the job and everything. And I was just, and then something happened in that relationship that I just broke. And that was right after I'd won. My ex-husband ended up hurting my daughter as well. And I went through a years long court battle, tens upon tons of thousands of dollars, investigators and experts. And to do that was insane. And I finally won in 2014. And that happened in my relationship, my new relationship. It was actually 4 years into a new relationship. And I just broke. And for 2 years, I just sort of floated around, and I had an awesome manager and an awesome job, and I loved it. And then my manager passed away. And I ended up in an active suicidal ideation. And I was going to go. I planned it. I was going to leave. I had everything taken care of. I had life insurance. I had all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't know as much as I thought I knew, but I was thinking that the world would be so much better off without me. And on that day, I just heard a voice that said, you said yes, you can't do this. You said yes. And what I had said yes to was during the court situation, dealing with my daughter and watching a court system that basically handed her back to him after a situation. Then he did it again. And I was just like, over my dead body, so my body, my brain, my spiritual self or higher power, whatever you want to call it, was like, girl, you said you were going to do something about this, so let's do it. And that was when I decided I had to get better. I had to get better. And trauma-informed care came into my world. And I met some incredible providers in the alternative healthcare and the traditional healthcare world who just rocked my world. They were safe, they were educational, they didn't react to my story like with horror and running away or treating me poorly or like a second-class citizen, because I think that's what happens to many women, especially, right? We disclose, and it's still a problem. It's getting better, but we disclose and we're looked at, and this happened in some of my workplaces, and then you're just looked at like a lesser person. And in fact, my very last job, I disclosed some stuff to my boss, and I was mysteriously laid off shortly after that. So it's a problem in our world, but I was determined. As each of those things happened, they gave fuel to my fire. And this is ridiculous. I deserve to be able to live just like everybody else does. So I also had ended up finally graduating. I graduated magna cum laude from the University of Akron with a degree in organizational supervision, which ended up being my passion. It was the way I think. Process improvement, project management. Had no idea what those words were before I got my degree, because I was homeschooled. We didn't have a lot of interactions. And that was when I thought, oh my gosh, I can marry process improvement and project management to my how, my clawing my way forth, and put those two together. And I can take my years-long journey and put it into a little basket of tools, right, and teach people. And I don't have to get into the nuances of my story, because I am still healing from my trauma. I can tell the story, like today I'm having very minimal nervous system activation. So I'm feeling a little bit cold in my hands, but that's about it, because I'm self-regulating during this call, which is a really cool tool that I learned through my journey, and that I also do in my classes, and I teach people actively how to do it.
That is amazing. Wow. I want to ask you, because we're running out of time, but trauma comes in different ways and forms. And I feel like, wow, yours is repetitive. And in life, we go through repetitive processes of trauma in different ways, right? And so for any of the listeners out there who may have gone through, I don't want to say a similar journey, because everybody's journey is different, but have had their set of traumas. And then I know a lot of people experienced traumas when it came to just COVID-19 alone. And then you have business owners who are like scrambling to keep their business alive right now. And so there's some effects with that, or maybe they experienced some loss before, so they have PTSD during this time. And this is the podcast they listen to, like people telling me, oh, I'm doing my makeup or I'm on my daily run, like, so what encouraging advice, like, because on your website, I was just scrolling around, which the colors are joyful. It's very peaceful. And you talk about how you help women create their incredible comeback. So it's almost like, let me reignite you and let me reengage you with joy. So is there any tools that you can give the listeners if you're finding yourself in a similar situation? Here's some things I suggest you do to try to find that joy again.
Oh, yes, absolutely. There are three main ingredients for getting back your joy, or maybe finding it for the first time. And number one is finding trauma-informed care with a body work modality incorporated. Let me translate. Trauma-informed care is a person who's been trained to be a safe space for someone who's been through trauma. They know about PTSD, they know what trauma does to the body, the brain, and the nervous system combination, and they're able to engage with you in a way that helps you stay safe, and they create a safe space for you to basically relearn how to have a relationship with another human, with conflict that's safe, and anything that comes up, you're able to engage with that person in a safe way. So they could be a doctor, counselor, etc. And they do body work. And that could be something like trauma recovery yoga, somatic experiencing, even Reiki, and other like massage practitioners as well can perform trauma-informed body work. They need to be specially trained though. So just make sure they're trauma-informed. Then the second part is educating yourself. I read tons and tons and tons of trauma books. I just couldn't get enough of them. When I found out that it wasn't me, that I wasn't bad or broken, it was a life changer. It was my body. It was my brain. I had literally brain damage. PTSD changes things in your brain. And I knew that I could heal because our bodies are designed to heal. And so then I started incorporating the strategies. And that's what you need to do, is have a plan. And if you're in a space of trauma, it's hard to plan because our prefrontal cortexes aren't working, which is the planning and organizing part of our brains. So you need somebody in the beginning to help you learn how to plan and strategize and communicate and stay outside of the emotion of it. And so that's the 3-step process that any trauma survivor can incorporate into their lives in different ways to find that joy again. Because once you gain your autonomy and you start to see that it's because of what you went through that you are so strong, it's called post-traumatic growth. There's nothing that can stop you. Absolutely nothing. You realize, wow, I'm amazing and incredible, and I can do it. I can make it happen. And then life's never the same again.
I love that. And I'm going to list that out in the caption for you guys, along with all of Adrienne's links. But before we go, obviously the podcast is called PR Yourself. And so one of the things that I like to tell people is like here are unconventional ways that you can literally create publicity for yourself. And one of those main things as publicists we always talk about is storytelling. So it's like, you've given us this 3-step method that, hey, if you've gone through some trauma and you're trying to find joy again and you need to work through healing, here's your 3 steps. I'm going to go a step further in saying that once you make it through, I want to encourage you to help others heal and be a mirror for someone else that says, wow, look at Adrienne. Adrienne is a beautiful human being. She inspires me. I went through some things. Let me tell my story too, because human connection and connecting emotionally with people helps them to see you on more than just a business level. It helps with business in the end, because now it's like, oh, I want to work with her. I just love her spirit. But you have to get past it and tell your story. So what is your advice? Because that's how I brought you on, was me hearing literally a snippet. And I said, holy cow, Adrienne, please come on my podcast. Please, 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 please. So what is your advice for others who may be like, I'm a little bit afraid to tell what I've been through?
Oh, Brene Brown, her vulnerability and shame work. it changed my life. And again, that ties back into the first step of the recovery. Body work helps you to release the body memories of shame that our culture kind of puts on to survivors. And her work, I am on the third reading of Daring Greatly, because it just gets into your soul and you start to realize the power of being vulnerable. When people look to you and say, oh my gosh, how did you do it? And then you start to get that a new feedback of empowerment. And you're also doing the shame releasing, then you have nothing left to fear or to hold you back. So sharing your story, finding your way of doing it too. I'm very neat. You saw my website. It's not the most, some would say, modern looking, but I don't care. I did my website the way that it poured out of me. My joy came out the way I am. And I look at it like every soul out there, we love them because of who they are. Mm-hmm. We love Oprah because of who she is. You know, we love Kamala because of who she is. Mm-hmm. We can criticize or admire all day long, but it doesn't matter. They're just them and they're doing them. And that's how you attract your tribe. So finding that vulnerability to be brave, be you, will help you to attract the right people into your world, who are then going to share, and they're going to, like you just heard a little bit of my story, and authentic sharing, and it just naturally starts happening. But it's a grind. There are days, let me tell you, it's been over 2-year grind, but I love it. And the hope that it brings, there's nothing else like hope to keep you going. And my story gives what we went through a purpose, my daughter and I. It gives us our why, so that way we don't stop.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Adrienne, just for coming on, sharing your story. Man, this kind of gets me jacked for the rest of the day. Like, you can do it, girl. And I'm so excited. We won't announce it here, but we do have a special giveaway for you guys. I had so many ideas as we were doing the podcast, Adrienne, so I'll connect with you offline on how we can reincorporate that giveaway, because I want people to see a video of you. I want them to see just how lovely you are. So we'll do that offline, but you have to be following on social media in order to even know what Adrienne's giving away to all you lovely listeners. So tell everybody how they can follow you in the meantime, and how they can connect with you if they feel like, hey, I want what she has to offer.
Absolutely. I have made it super easy. It's Adrienne Rouan. So I am Adrienne Rouan everywhere. Trauma survivors, we need it easy, right? So Adrienne Rouan on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, adriennerouan.com. If you Google me, you will find me.
Awesome. Link up with Adrienne. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Tell your story, be brave, but if you need the healing, get the healing that you need. Follow Adrienne's 3 steps, connect with her offline. You know what to do. If you like this episode, subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. But this one is important. Thinking I'm gonna make this a bonus one. So I want you to share it out. Everybody needs to hear this, especially right now during this time. So thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time.